Well, good morning. I'm out here enjoying this beautiful Saturday, May morning and sitting in my gazebo, redneck gazebo, just enjoying the sounds of the morning and the quietness before everybody gets up and around and goes about their weekend activities. So I've been thinking lately, especially with this G3 thing that popped off with Josh Bice. And really it's been going on for a long time, but this has just kind of brought it to a head. I specifically been thinking about, for lack of a better word, the woke right and its cancel culture, because I'm sorry. Conservatism, the right on the conservatism of Christianity is not even conservatism anymore. It's authoritarian. I'm a conservative, and this isn't even conservative. They might hold some biblical stances, but others are just ungodly, just as ungodly as the left. And I think it needs to be addressed. And I'm sure there's plenty of guys who are going to call me woke now and whatever else, but it is what it is, and this is quickly becoming an ungodly movement. I think about all the online trolls there are. There's guys that boast about being Christian Twitter trolls. I mean, they live terminally online. I used to be a troll. I used to enjoy doing trolling, but it's not godly. It's trying to evoke emotions out of other people, and that's not godly. There's definitely room to be had for a conversation, respectful conversation, but that does not typically happen on the internet. Yeah, especially with the anonymous trolls who... I've had anonymous accounts before and been accused of being a coward by the woke right, but now they're praising anonymous accounts, so they seem to not really have much of a foundation. It's just, okay, it's okay when we do it, but not when other people do it. So fortunately, God's commands are sure, they are firm, they do not show partiality. So I've been thinking about when Costi Hinn went after Doug Wilson and Michael O'Fallon, and G3 was caught in the crossfire, and Josh Bice basically told Costi to shut up and say he was sorry to G3 and Josh Bice for what he did. And he capitulated. I mean, he had a lot of people telling him, a lot of big Eva Reformed people, like James White and Tom Buck and Tom Ascol, who will come up later, and all the other typical talking heads of the celebrity culture, telling him he was wrong. So he eventually capitulated. He went dark. I think his social media accounts are still gone. He took down that podcast, but you can still find it online. I have a link in an older video. I think it's worth a listen to. But that's kind of where it started. That's where I really started losing respect for a lot of Reformed guys like James White and Apologia and others. And then the Stephen Lawson thing happens, and Josh Bice comes out and wants to correct everybody and tell them they're in sin. And given his recent activities, that is quite ironic. I want to talk about Josh Bice. I do think there are some things that he raised, some points that weren't simply slander. I think there's a lot of concerns he had. But every time the woke right Big Eva gets criticized, sorry, I wanted to wait for that to pass. Suddenly it's slander, but they can go around and say all kinds of ugly things online or in videos about other people. I think there were a lot of things that Josh Buice was afraid to say as Josh Buice, so he made anonymous accounts. And I think that's pretty cowardly, because he told Costi to shut up when Costi was bringing up some very legitimate stuff, but he had the courage to do so as himself. Josh Buice, or Grant Hawthorne, whoever the real Josh Buice is. Maybe he's been Grant Hawthorne all this time, and Grant Hawthorne was his actual account. Turns out that's his actual name. Josh Buice was his troll account. Anyway, I think there's a lot of legitimate stuff that Josh Buice brought up, just having read some of the tweets. I think he saw that there was a very, that he saw that what he thought were conservative circles were quickly becoming infected by being woke right, Christian nationalist. I think he saw the dangerous association with Doug Wilson really starting to come into play, especially with Tom Ascol and Founders, who's a bit of a mover and shaker himself. And I think the concerns he had were legitimate, just the way in which he went about it was both cowardly and wrong. And obviously he was just an outright liar on a lot of stuff. But I think a lot of it was he didn't want to be canceled, either because of, taking a personal financial hit, being thought unpopular. Whatever it was, I think he was kind of afraid of the cancel culture, and probably more concerned about his own financial well-being. I can't say for certain. I don't want to speculate, but I think there were a lot of things he said that were probably accurate, but now that he has been shown to be a liar and such, that's all. Any legitimate claims he had are just going to be swept under the rug because, well, he's a liar, so he shouldn't be believed. So that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate he didn't just do it, spill the beans himself. But I think there was also more sin going on there than we realize, but I also don't think that he was totally in the wrong, and I don't think a lot of the things he said were probably wrong. It's just, now they'll get painted with a broad brush wrong. He's shown himself to be a liar, so we don't need to listen to any of that. It was just all slander. And it's funny, Josh Buice wanted to come out and lecture people about being in sin when the Steve Lawson thing popped off, and then he got showed to be in sin. And now Tom Ascol is coming out and wanting to lecture other people on sin, and specifically Josh Buice's sin, similar to how Josh Buice lectured people in regard to Steve Lawson's sin. But here's the thing about Tom Ascol. He goes around saying ugly things to people online. He calls people gay, which I called people gay and said things were gay when I was in middle school and high school 20 years ago. It's pretty unbecoming of a man who wants to talk about godliness and lecture other people on sin to himself be acting sinfully online towards other people. And maybe I'll get labeled woke for this, but for all the things that are going on in Moscow, Idaho, spousal rape and other sexual abuse, in addition to Doug Wilson's totally heretical redefinition of faith, federal vision, which is to be expected from somebody who teaches legalism, all his ungodly behavior, and I'm sorry, Joel Webbin, Brian Sauvé, Eric Kahn are his disciples. They're taking his serrated edge to its logical place. I think it's pretty ironic that Tom Ascol is lecturing people about sin when he himself is in sin, acts very ungodly, very ugly towards other people, and he's partnering with some very ugly and sinful and evil people. And I'm amazed more people in evangelicalism aren't calling this out. I mean, Moscow, Idaho, it's very obvious. And if it's not obvious to you, I would say you need to spend more time with God and less time trolling people online. It seems like in these circles there's very much a, here's the establishment, don't question us, if you do, you're woke and you're canceled. And I think that's why Josh Bice did what he did. I think he had concerns, but he was afraid of getting canceled. And like I said, I think there were other sins involved, but he was very much not pro Moscow and not pro Doug Wilson. I think Costi Hinn is owed a big fat apology, and I think he is far more courageous than a lot of people would give him credit for. I think he's brave, but everybody else is, back then was calling him woke and whatever else. I think it's crazy that if you bring up that there is sexual abuse, there are people saying there's sexual abuse going on in Moscow, then you're woke too. Certainly, false accusations of sexual abuse are rampant nowadays, but, it doesn't make you woke to actually maybe give a listening ear to these things. But I mean, I think in the reformed world, this celebrity status for pastors is really taking a toll, and we're just coming up with another establishment you can't question. You got the liberal side where, you're ungodly if you say homosexuality is a sin and is evil, if you say that feminism is evil, if you say that abortion is evil, then you're evil. And you get canceled. But it's the same thing on the right. Sorry, it is. If you touch its leaders, if you go against the grain, then you are automatically in sin, and you're on the wrong side of history. And that is abusive, and that is evil. And it's too bad to see that happening. And I think we need to start spending less time online listening to people. I think we need to, I can't remember who it was that said it, but we need to spend more time reading old dead guys, because at least their lives are mostly known. Their words are true, and I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like I don't know what to believe anymore. I was reading in 2 Timothy 3 this morning that deceitful men will go from bad to worse, deceiving others and being deceived. And with this AI stuff going on, fake sermons being posted from MacArthur and Balcom, things they didn't actually say, and it's just a really weird time. I don't actually know what's going on anymore, it seems. So I don't know. I think the celebrity pastor culture needs to die. I think, I definitely think this anti-woke establishment needs to die, because the church has been fighting liberalism for years. This is nothing new. G3 isn't going to save you. Doug Wilson is not only not going to save you, he will damn you to hell with his false gospel. Joel Webbin, as meaningless as the term is, I think it can only be described as he is gravitating increasingly towards Nazism. I'm frankly quite amazed to see him and his cohorts descending into the very things that I was rescued out of before I was saved. I hated blacks, I hated Jews. I'm very much held alt-right tendencies, and yes, the alt-right is a thing. Richard Spencer, Andrew Torba, people like that. It was a thing. Still is a thing, and it's just crazy seeing people who profess Christ gravitating towards that, becoming that. That was the exact opposite for me by God's grace, and I don't say that to boast. I just say that because it's shocking to see. And I would by no means say that James White or Doug Wilson are dispensationalists, but I mean, even they, when they say, hey, anti-Semitism isn't cool, they get accused of, I guess, being Zionists or worshiping Israel or something. I don't know. This is a very toxic culture that has happened in Christian far-right circles. I remember when I first became Reformed 5-6 years ago, and that was just fun. It seemed like there was a love for sound biblical teaching, for truth. And now it just seems like there's a just pugnaciousness, and not even fighting over actual theology. It's fighting over justifying your particular sin and evil by twisting scripture, just like the charismatics and Word of Faith do. It's just as evil, and it's sad to see. It's sad to see people who a theology which loved sound biblical teaching, loved God, to just devolve into this. I'm surprised by it and saddened by it. So, that's my thoughts. If that makes me woke, I guess, let me know in the comments for anybody who happens to watch this.